off the top of my head. It may be available in the FSBA on Prima, the resolution of that.
Oh, okay.
So if I may, Darlene, I don't know if you happen to notice, but I want to just from a strict process standpoint, wrap my head around this. So are you saying that we don't know, or we know that essentially FSBA is our only conduit as to what AICPA will say, or is there some form of affirmative outreach to the administrating entity in terms of what the follow-up is, short of the FSBA thing? I'm not sure that I fully followed that. So if you can, if you know and can explain it, please do.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I will Teams my peer review experts back at the office while I'm on this meeting and report back later.
I'm looking it up now.
I'm not sure what information the AICPA divulges when they are doing a referral of a firm.
So I think ultimately the committee's interest would be, did they get dropped from the program? What was that? Do you know that if they get dropped?
Well, they get dropped from the program, yes, you would. We would see that, and you would be able to see that on the FSBA site as well.
Okay. All right. I'll keep it on there just to keep up to date with it.
And Brenda, just to be clear for you and for the committee, right? If the ultimate action happens, which is like, hey, this firm was kicked out of peer review, I can confirm that there are essentially national level lists that get distributed out where NASBA has coordinated with AICPA, that we all get notified of that. I think the question is, and that's why I really appreciate Darlene following up, if there is something other than an actual termination, which we would get notice of, is there some kind of a feedback loop other than something appearing on FSBA? And I think that's what, like, short of formally getting dropped, is there some other notification process outside that event?
Thank you, Martin. All right, moving on to new business. Just wanted to mention that with the agenda was the RAB oversight checklist. I can't remember who provided this. Can you speak up and tell me and remind me? It was either Pamela or Carrie. Thank you. I wanted to thank you. I looked at it. It is so, I loved it. I think it's going to be so helpful because I'm never sure, what is important. I just loved it. So thank you so much. And please, everybody, feel free to use that as you attend the RAB meetings. It was really comprehensive, and I found it to be really helpful. So I'm pretty excited about that. And moving on to related committee member reports. I had taken pretty poor notes on this, I will confess. I believe, John, that you attended the September 19th RAB.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Care to give us a brief report?
Yeah, so I'll give you a brief report. So there were six firms on the consideration agenda, all pass ratings that had previous pass ratings. They had their various MFCs and FFCs, but nothing of consequence to prevent the pass rating. So the RAB does their usual discussion on those, and those were all accepted. On the consent agenda, there was one prior fail rating from 2024. They completed their corrective action, which was reissuing an audit with pre-issuance review. So that was done and completed and satisfactorily submitted to the RAB. There were two other pending correction actions that requested waivers. One requested a waiver of pre-issuance review of his next review engagement, saying that he'd lost his last review client. He wasn't going to do reviews anymore. So he's going to do compilations only. And then the other one was similar. They'd lost the staff. They had one single audit that they needed to have a pre-issuance review before the next single audit, and they ceased performing single audits. So they requested waivers of their requirements to have their next engagement reviewed because there was going to be no next engagement. So that all seemed very reasonable and kind of routine, as those things are. That's it. Very short meeting.
Alright, thank you. And like I said, my notes weren't great. Did anybody attend the October RAB meeting?
I did, Brenda.
Thank you.
And so it was my first RAB meeting and also my first opportunity of hearing a summary. So my notes are not as organized as John, so I do apologize for that. And also being new, I did take the opportunity to fill out the checklist. So thank you so much, Pamela, for sharing that. So my review will have different spin, but I will follow the details that John outlined next time. So there are 8 reviews. There were 3 on the, 4 on the consideration agenda. I sent for 3. I assume the 4th one was held in executive session. It wasn't explained to you, but Darlene may be able to help with any questions on that.
That was a Hawaii firm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's probably
Yeah.
the one.
Okay, that's helpful to know. 2 corrective action, 2 referral. One was going to be referred or to consideration for referral. One was going to be referred, but they submitted their materials after being non-responsive for a significant amount of time. They did end up submitting their materials, I think days before the RAB meeting. So the committee will be reviewing that. Overall, the committee had really well-informed questions, well-informed discussion, and took the opportunity to include that on the checklist as well. So my only follow-up question for procedurally on that checklist, is that something that I provide to you, Brenda, or to Andrew, or what would be the protocol with that?
I don't think so. I think we're really just using that to help us, kind of gather our thoughts and take some notes so that we can report out at the committee meetings. We haven't really done anything formal like that, but
Okay. One item that I did address more on the checklist was that there was additional discussion after a review of the firms, and there's a review of the AICPA quality management QM standards and the December 15th implementation date. Also discuss alternative practice structures with ESOP and private equity. So those high-level talking points seem to mirror the conversation that for this group the last time we met that I had the opportunity to be a part of. And that completes my report.
thank you. And I attended the September 10th AICPA peer review open session, where they also talked a lot about alternative practice. I don't really call that, but talked a little bit about a new emerging area framework proposal. And so I was just going to outline it, but also encourage everybody to take a look at the agenda. There's a lot of information in that one if you're interested in this topic. They started by, they're building a framework. The framework sort of starts with assigning, similar to what we do, and similar to the new quality management standards, where they're going to be assigned a risk assessment. So these emerging areas, they're going to risk assess, and there's kind of like a low risk assessment where they feel like there's a real remote likelihood of harm. And then there's a higher level of that, which is where they're talking about that could harm the public or profession if it's not handled properly. So from that emerging area where they've risk assessed it as higher, they're going to start classifying it, and they're classifying it really kind of by industry and level of service, audit and attest, and then system of quality management. So those 3 main areas were discussed. And then they said any others that fall outside of those would be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So then they designed a kind of a risk matrix, and for each of those, a thought leader will be assigned. And the goal overall of this risk matrix is to identify potential risk areas early enough to allow for a really full, thoughtful response to the risk. And so there was inside this matrix, and there's a lot of examples and a lot of information that I'm not covering, but there's pre-identification, preliminary, developing, and advanced. And so those are the areas that they'll go through with the leadership of the assigned thought leader. They also talked a lot within this sort of framework about an annual practice questionnaire. And so this questionnaire would be designed to identify emerging areas. And there was a ton of discussion around this notion of failure to respond would result in a drop from the AICPA program. A lot of people objected to that. There was a lot of objections to that. There was a lot of concerns mentioned, because perhaps firms are not used to looking for communications from Prima if it's not, or Prima, I think it's Prima, if it's not a peer review year. So something that maybe they don't even realize they needed to respond to, and then they're being dropped. And so there was a lot of discussion around that. But they believe this is the only way they're going to be able to identify these, because, and if you wait a year, then maybe we've passed that piece where we're pre-identification or preliminary, and then we're not hitting those early enough to provide that thoughtful response. So yeah, that was a discussion. But the leaning from the board appeared to be, yes, you would be dropped if you didn't respond. And so those will be further discussed, but that is kind of how they're thinking. They will ask a few questions on the questionnaire and start to develop, is this a risk? If it is it low? Is it high? So that's sort of the very, very high level view of what they're discussing for that. And then they also discussed the exposure draft, which was the proposed peer review standard update number 3, which is modernizing peer review administration requirements. That was issued on that date, September, whatever date, I think it was September 10th, and comments were due October 25th. So I didn't have a chance to comment or really thoroughly read through it. And then I actually lost my desktop and got dropped from the call. So that is what I had. But I will tell you, at this meeting, which was very long, the bulk of it was very much on these the emerging area framework. So I don't think I missed much. So yeah, it was a good discussion. It was interesting, and encourage everybody to take a look at the slides. I have them. If anybody wants them, I have the slides, because I did a bunch of pink highlights and some stuff that I found interesting. So let me know. Okay, back to the agenda. Okay, so upcoming meetings to be assigned. That looks like there's a question for me on this draft. I don't know if the November 11th AICPA peer review board meeting is already assigned. We talked about that, and I again had bad notes. Was that something, John, you had said you wanted to attend, or that you couldn't attend?
Let me see here. I'm available to attend. I haven't been able to attend an AICPA meeting. The one I signed up for, I was sick.
Okay.
So in the past, last year, I think. So I am available for that one.
Okay, if you'd like to attend that, I'll put you down
Okay.
for that one.
Yeah.
And then if you or Martin
And
could send
Madam
the meeting link.
Chair,
Sorry, Martin, I think you're cutting out a little.
sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over John. I thought that, John, why don't you finish your thoughts and I'll jump in for a second.
Oh, I was just going to ask if either of you had a meeting link you could send me, that would be great, but go ahead.
I think I can send you something, even though it's a state holiday. I need to work that day for other reasons, so I was planning on at least trying to listen in to that one, and that's also in part. So that is not meant to discourage you, because I would prefer that there's at least one CPA on the call, and I'm not. But there is a lot of discussion that happened at NASBA around what may or may not come out peer review side. as well as peak side around APS, PE. So I'm definitely, very much interested in having at least some level of presence there, because it feels like things are heating up a little bit as opposed to kind of just treading in the normal territory. So if you can make it, John, that would be amazing, because I think that there's potentially some help we're going to need from Brock, potentially even outside the regular meeting schedule. Because if what I'm hearing is accurate around what may happen next and exposure drafts and shortened timelines, we're going to struggle a little bit in terms of just the logistics of responding, both absorbing and responding to what's coming out and getting proposed.
Okay.
I have a meeting link I can send you, John, but I don't have your email.
Okay. I have yours. I'll send you my email and you can reply to it.
Perfect.
All right, and then I am assigned for the November 14th RAB. Looks like Carrie's the December 19th RAB. And then there's something on here that I don't think I put on. Maybe I'll need some help from staff. It says update from Board of Accountancy staff on recruitment. Is that it? Or maybe I had it on there and it was just an error from before.
I
So
think this may have been a leftover because we were trying to, obviously, we're blessed to have Michelle with us. Now, I am still working on additional recruitment. I tried to get somebody from another firm, actually, quite frankly, a firm that has gone the PE route onto the committee, because I think that will be really helpful to have that perspective, but I haven't been successful yet, but I'm going to keep trying.
thank you. Okay. I'm going to move on then to discussion of the 2025 annual report draft. I did want to mention, I had some notes from our last meeting that we had some questions about the committee's authority to refer firms to the investigative unit of the board. I think we talked a little bit about it that it maybe didn't have any clarity. And I just was, as I was reviewing the 801 and putting it within that report, it did say that part of our responsibilities under that is for those consecutive non-pass peer review reports to determine whether a referral to the board's compliance unit is warranted. So that is something that is in that OAR that we're working under. I don't remember who had the question. I just had a bunch of chicken scratch about it. But as I had the opportunity to go through and draft the report, I saw that. So I believe that it does need to be part of our consideration as we're looking through these firms that are non-consecutive. And did anybody have any questions or requests for information to be included in our report? Basically, last year's just updated for this year. So
I thought it looked good.
right. Okay. Well, great. I was just gonna update it. Oh,
Sorry, Brenda, is this the one that's the annual 2025 annual report dated January
Yes.
31, 26?
Yes.
So on page 5, great. It's in yellow. The next AICPA administering oversight is to take place in 2024. That's not accurate. It's actually 2025. It's happening November of 2025.
Yep. And I think I kind of knew that. I just needed updated on it because I knew that, but I just didn't know when. So I think I remembered that are they gonna be at the November 15th
Yeah.
lab? Is that what it is?
Yeah, the AICPA oversight task force person will be at that meeting that you're going to be observing as well.
Okay. And then do they put out a report?
I believe that they do, yes.
Okay. Okay, good. I will update that. We don't send this out till January, but this is really our last meeting before that. So I want to make sure that we had it, you know, just a skeleton. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can't guarantee the AICPA will get the report out by January, but
I don't think they did the
it takes them a
last
while. It takes them a
time
while. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. So.
Okay.
And then can you also update me? The OSCPA puts out a report as well, correct?
We do an annual report. Yeah.
Okay. And the timing of that annual report?
I believe that comes out in January, February-ish.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, and then the other thing that I had a chance to draft was our just kind of member handbook, very brief, but just sort of, you know, something that I think that would have been useful for me as I came onto the proc. Anybody have any comments of information that maybe wasn't contained there that would have been useful to you as you came onto the proc? Comments? Thoughts?
It's really helpful just with the timing of me joining this committee. And in light of the checklist, I didn't know if that may be helpful to include as an appendix or an exhibit.
I think, oh, did I not? Okay, yes, I think that's a great idea. I thought I had done that, but
Oh wait, no, maybe it is. It's just XX on the table of contents.
yeah.
I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, yep, we'll do that. Okay, anything missing on that you really wanted to know, especially since you're really fresh and new?
And while you're waiting for an answer, I'll just want to say thank you for really lifting that up, Brenda, because that is just all part of that beautiful rebuild that you helped lead in terms of what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I really appreciate it.
Yes, it was. I hope it'll be helpful. You know what I don't know, I think, and maybe might be yellow that you might be able to help me with, Martin, is the term. Or is it 3-year terms?
Committee members are on 2-year terms.
2-year terms, and how many terms can they serve?
Maximum of 3. Well, that's of course always, quite frankly, board discretion. And we've had,
Right.
when we are in changeover modes, sometimes we, how should I say this gently, using a non-technical term, duct tape things as necessary to make sure that our committees function. There might be a more sophisticated term, but I hope that makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Okay, good. All right. Well, I'll get that finalized then sometime in December or January. It won't be November. Let's see. Okay. So then just a discussion of the non-pass firms. And Andrew, I think you left a note for me again because I couldn't meet. You looked at FSBA on 10/27? No new pass with deficiency or fails.
Yeah, that was just to say, that was the last time we checked.
Oh, okay, perfect. That's very timely. So this last week. So we're gonna talk about 41 and 42. As far as I could tell, we hadn't talked about them yet. Does that seem like a true statement? I feel like the numbers were out of order because we talked about maybe 42 and 4 or 43 and 40 last week. I can't remember, but those are ones that did those look familiar to anybody? I want to make sure that it's appropriate for us to discuss 41 and 42. All right. So I would love it if somebody had some comments. We'll start with 41. Anything here that you found alarming out of the ordinary that we should consider or discuss. It looks like they were pass with deficiency and pass with deficiency. So not fail.
I think Brenda, my comment was a bit concerning. It was in their initial pass with deficiency letter that they were noticed that the staff were not required to take certain CPE, and then again in the was it the 2023 letter, they were not using industry specific manuals or guides. So that just seemed like a common theme, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think that I had just a feel that it maybe did not get better, but got a little bit worse in the second one. So even though not a fail, seemed like there was more items of concern related, like you said, to really more their system of, quality as opposed to any specific engagement. Yeah, that number 2 on the 23 was concerning. Not looking at independence in accordance with the yellow book when they're drafting the financial statement. So it just seemed like it got a little worse, but I think overall for me, I wasn't sure there was anything that was so out of, I feel pretty confident that that this will likely be handled by the RAB with some corrective action, and it's not like so egregious. That was just my feeling. I'd love to hear what you guys were thinking.
My concern was on the deficiencies on the second report, and it still passed the deficiencies, was that the deficiency was noted in the firm's prior peer review. And I kind of thought that if you noted the same deficiencies, that they kind of almost went to fail, most likely, but apparently not. That was my biggest concern, I think.
Darlene, do we know when this is scheduled to go before the RAB, or has it?
No, they have 2 open corrective actions. So
Okay,
those have to
2
come
open
in
corrective
before it
actions.
goes to the RAB.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll keep
Yes,
this on.
My other
Okay.
concern is having worked in the HUD area myself, which I don't anymore. But you've got to comply with the Yellow Book CPE requirements, right? So that's 40 hours a year for partners and managers, and it's 24 for staff. And I don't know how you could, I mean, having gone to dozens of those CPEs over the years, they walk you through all this stuff, control risk, understanding and assessing control risk, minimum sample size guidance, all those other things. On top of this, HUD has specific HUD audit guides, so you don't have to buy third-party stuff. You can get the HUD audit guides, which are free, free to use. So it seems to me like, this is a specialized audit area, and it seems like, they're kind of not even in the ballpark. I don't know if I agree with the past with deficiencies. I never looked at the files. I mean, maybe it isn't as bad as I think it is, but basically, ignorance is never an excuse for us in professional practice, but specifically in the HUD area, it's so specific, and the CPE requirements are so specific as part of your AICPA membership, as well as, I think it's AICPA membership as well as government auditing standards. It's like, I mean, I used to get caught on this because we'd have staff that wouldn't comply with the staff CPE thing. I'd take my eye off the ball and somebody didn't get their 24 hours. So it's pretty definite. I don't know how you could miss these things. I don't know how you could play in this area and not and have these kinds of issues is I guess what I would say.
Right. It does feel a little bit like they should maybe not be practicing in this area if they don't have the capability of training staff and taking it seriously.
But on the other hand, the RAB doesn't have the authority, to to tell them not to do that. I mean, that's a
Oh,
different.
yeah, no, it'll just be interesting to, I think, hear their response to whatever the corrective action ends up being.
Yeah.
I liked
Okay.
Rob's corrective action of hiring the outside party, and I would be curious to know what that outside party's monitoring report is, because I know that's coming up on December 31st. So I think that was a good corrective action, given that it was not a fail, that it was passed with deficiency.
And can you remind me, because I don't remember specifically, was that a pre-issuance or post? It was after the fact?
It's a pre-issuance.
It was a pre-issuance, okay.
And then I think there's also a written report on the firm's monitoring program. There's I think there's two. They asked an outside party to do two things.
Okay. Okay, so I will keep this on. Anybody have any other trackers or questions? Otherwise, I will make a little summary of the comments and keep it on our tracker. Anything else before we move on to the next firm? Which does appear to be, I'm trying to wrap my head around. It was passed with deficiency, then fail. I think I have these out of order, but. Yes, okay. Any comments on this one? Any insights that we should consider as we're trying to keep track of the status? I'm always a little bit myself, a little more concerned when they don't make progress or have a fail after a pass with deficiency. Particularly related to their kind of culture of quality.
Well, I thought it's problematic that in their first pass with deficiencies, I mean, fairly severe, but on their quality control, but just the numerous items outlined in their second field review.
You're talking about the numerous items
Mm-hmm.
in the second one, the failure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I mean, not just a repeat, but it's voluminous. I mean,
there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it, and again, I similar to John's comments on HUD when we're looking in the governmental auditing standards. Again, I typically tend to, question whether this is something they should be working in. It looks like there's a lot of things related to governmental audits and single audits. Even though one comment I saw that was interesting is that they said that the staff completed extensive continuing education on governmental auditing, but none of it got implemented. So some leadership issues there.
Well, and regardless of the audit type, their quality control, lack of a pre-issuance review or documentation thereof, that'd be regardless of engagement type.
Looks like a lot of misses on updates, like the SAS updates and language. I can't tell, and I can't remember from when I read through this, whether they are using practice aids or whether that might be something helpful for them. Um,
I think that what's interesting to me is with the corrective action report, again, we're dealing with a firm subject to Yellow Book CPE requirements. And so, they're saying, well, okay, we'll have a continuing ed accounting and auditing update. Then we're doing on audit documentation, and then do the 6-hour AICPA self-study, applying and scaling audit risk. And it's kind of like, I just don't know how you comply with Yellow Book CPE requirements without doing this stuff on a regular basis. And the implication to me here is, well, you don't know how to do this stuff, so we're going to tell you to do it. And it's like, well, they've already been told to take CPE. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just
right, and then that,
kind of my perspective is already been told to take CPE. I think I mean, I just don't know how you can comply with government auditing standards, CPE requirements, and have this kind of deficits that they're talking about in the corrective action.
right. And the fact that they've taken a lot of CPE, but it's not being applied into their engagements is concerning. So,
Cool. I'm curious how they're meeting their CPE requirement and only for this, I mean, obviously not for this, but their Oregon Muni license. I mean, I know that very different threshold in the hours, but
yeah, I'm trying to remember, is it 24 hours every 2 years? I literally am a muni auditor. And I
yeah,
forgot.
so I've maintained my Muni audit license. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
24 every 2 years. Yeah.
24 every 2 for staff, but not for partners and managers.
But on the muni license, I think that's the same. And
Oh,
but
muni.
on the
Yeah.
yellow book, it's way more stringent than that. As long as you meet yellow book, you easily meet the Oregon standards,
Yeah.
the licensing standards.
So the only thing about this corrective action is, and then of course I was reading the firm's, response letter, which I didn't feel was that responsive.
Mhm.
Right? I felt it was like a list of excuses as to why we didn't get things done. So it wasn't that responsive, but really, mandating staff CPE, the problem in this firm, just looking at it without knowing anything else, if I had to guess what the biggest problem was, is its leadership. It's tone at the top, it's leadership, it's partners that are in charge of engagements, and it's people that are doing primary review on the audit engagements. So that's to me the issue there. I don't know how the corrective actions address that other than when you have a pre-issuance review, the pre-issuance reviewer is going to go, well, you needed to do all this stuff, right? They're going to do the same thing that the peer reviewer did. It's like they're going to go, okay, miss. By the way, why don't you give me your CPE records and show me that you've complied with your Yellow Book CPE requirements. So, I mean, that's really the only.
I don't know if this question's allowed, but I believe, Darlene, that this firm was reviewed at the October 24th RAB with there's a change in ownership, and I believe the peer review.
Yeah, the RAB considered the consecutive non-pass and did not refer them to the AICPA based on the improvement shown in the pre and post issuance reviews. They're also no longer doing single audits.
Okay.
Thank you, Darlene. I just wanted to make sure I was respecting confidentiality, so appreciate additional insight.
Okay, so that actually makes me feel a little better. So they have completed their corrective actions and they they did show improvement and are not doing the single audits anymore. Anybody else have any questions or concerns? I mean, I'm just looking at how, like I said, how like we've all said, how voluminous it is, because even for like a review report, oh, just review of the report. Okay, good, for the single audit. Is it okay to ask if if they just stopped doing single audits, then did that review not happen, or did they do one and that happened and they'd improved, but they're just not doing single audits? What happens if they stop doing single audits and they've been assigned a pre-issuance review? Does that just?
Well,
Oh,
they,
it'll get waived because there's no review to pre-issue. There's nothing
Yeah,
to look
okay.
at.
Is that what happened here?
That's what
Did they have
happened.
That's
Yeah.
what happened. Okay, so they just stopped doing them.
yeah, so they request the waiver if they say, hey, I'm gonna have a
Right.
waiver of the pre-issuance review because I'm not gonna do any more single audits. So
Right, okay,
that's a good decision.
yeah, okay. All right, does anybody, given that, does anybody want to continue tracking this? Or are we feeling like the resolution is appropriate? Everything that I've read, a lot of it definitely had to do with single audit and governmental auditing standards. Am I missing anything? Anybody want me to continue tracking this one?
I think we can be done with 42 if they've dropped single audits and they're leaving the yellow book area. I wasn't clear with 41. Were they proceeding with the corrective action?
I think they still had some corrective action open.
Maybe we just want to track that one just to make sure.
Yep, that's the one. Yep, I'm gonna leave that on there to track.
Or they request a waiver. They decide they're not going to do it anymore and request the waiver. Okay.
Okay, good. We'll continue tracking number 41. Okay, so that's it for consecutive non-pass firms. Agenda item number 7 is just kind of my tracking of upcoming agenda items. I did want to mention that the biennial program review. So that was again coming out of my updating our annual report and going back through the OAR, and it does say that we are to conduct at least once every 2 years to ensure continued compliance with the requirements of the peer review program. So what I thought I would do is do a little bit of a deep dive as to what that might look like and put it on the agenda for our January meeting. We're meeting in January. Because I know that we really haven't done that. We did, I think a couple of years ago, we did something similar then. I don't think it was formalized, but we talked a lot about the AICPA program and the then in Operation Oregon program. The Oregon program is gone, so I feel like that somewhat qualifies for that biennial review, but we are coming back up on that. So I think that'll be something that we need to work through in 2026. And then B, that's just continued. That's just the CPE thing. I'm sure. I think Martin will update us when he can on that. So does anybody have anything they want to discuss that's not on the agenda? And or Martin, did you want to talk a little bit about what about the alternative practice structure, the LRC? I know I wasn't very helpful when you reached out to me. Just really busy time right now for me, so I'm having a hard time coming up with any kind of capacity to.
No, and that's really okay. There is a lot going on right now for everybody. What I simply would, given that opportunity, thank you, Brenda, briefly report out is there is at the LRC level, one of the things that they are currently working through is not in Division 50 proc rules, but it does relate to peer review. And it's essentially we have a different section of our rules in Division 30 that essentially lay out kind of the, professional misconduct and kind of the more disciplinary issues and authorities of the board. And in there right now, what's working its way through the LRC is, and was also briefly discussed at the board meeting on September 25th is explicit language in rule that would allow the board to take action based on peer review results. And so this is a little bit the other end of the equation of, you brought up earlier, Brenda, the issue of, when and how kind of we should refer something over into the disciplinary process, right? This is actually on the other end of that equation, which essentially means that the rule itself is intended to give the board explicit authority, not a must, but an option, that it can take disciplinary action based on problematic peer review outcomes, right? And the issue there is it's a little technical, and so I want to explain it for a minute, right? Normally, the board has to essentially, when things reach a disciplinary conclusion by the board, there's a whole process that comes prior to that that's essentially about neutral fact finding. There's an investigatory file that makes its way through a committee and then ultimately a board process, right? And so based on that evidence, the board can choose to determine that one or more rules of the board have violated. When it comes to peer review, the idea of that language is that the board would not have to reinvestigate what was already investigated essentially through the peer review process, that it wouldn't have to completely start over if you see that a firm has had real trouble in peer review, that essentially it gives the board more explicit authority, should it deem it appropriate, to say, we need to follow up on the board side based on something that came out of peer review without having to re-investigate everything that was already done in peer review. That's kind of my super high level my super high level summary. So that's one item where there is at least a need for awareness, I think, by the peer review committee. And obviously, this is still discussion and drafting stage. These rules have not been exposed for comment, but they will reach the board on December 1. We just had a change in board meeting date from December 4 to December 1, the Monday right after Thanksgiving, which is not our normal MO, but it was done with a view toward making sure we have a full attendance by all board members in December. So that's one issue that I think at minimum the peer review oversight committee here should be aware of. That does not, emphasis on not, mean that there wouldn't be other conversations we want to have either between the board or the LRC and PROC, which is why I extended that invitation to you. There is another Laws and Rules Committee meeting from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on November 17th, which means that we could even try to do a little bit of a flyby during lunch, right? If there is anything else that we may want to consider in terms of any conversations that you want to have around, is there anything Division 50 PROC rules changes, however minor, that you want to bring to their attention before they bring a proposal to the board on December 1? That's one issue. And then the other one that I don't know how that's going to play out, but my spidey sense says between now and November 18, which is the LRC date, the Laws and Rules Committee date I just mentioned, I think there is a very significant chance that AICPA side, we may potentially have some proposals out there related to peer review and peer review changes that are coming out of AICPA. And if so, it's going to be some kind of an exposure draft with a comment period, in which case it would be really helpful to have any feedback from PROC around, are there any thoughts that PROC has in terms of, hey, this is great, we're on board with this, or hey, this is great mostly, but this I think we should tweak. It's always good to have that feedback. I am not convinced from what I'm hearing that we may be able to do that short of making changes to the meeting schedule of PROC. So that's a little bit on my worry radar right now because we really like being very inclusive. We want to make sure we work with PROC. Not so sure. I think we could have a really busy period in November and December in terms of stuff coming out where it's very likely that this committee is going to want to weigh in some way on what's coming out nationally and if it has any thoughts that it wants to convey to the board, whether it's on rules, whether it's on responses to exposure drafts. So that could be on peer review itself, and potentially other matters as well. So I'll stop there. I hope that helps.
It does. So on number 1, I'm pretty sure we as a committee discussed any kind of rule or law changes. And I think we as a committee decided there really wasn't anything that we wanted to bring to the LRC's attention. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, that's what my notes say. I think that we did discuss it and felt like there wasn't anything on our radar that we felt like needed to be changed. Anybody?
I think that's correct, Brenda, because I think that more of the things that probably, I mean, if you were just to ask me what needs to be done, I think it's more of the Division 30 things that Martin already alluded to, as opposed to the Division 50 rules, which actually govern the PROC. And I think that that's where, I mean, just a simple thing that I was thinking about while Martin was talking, we were talking about the alternate practice. When you fill out your firm application with the Oregon board or your individual CPA application, there's questions that are directed to whether you're subject to peer review. And, those are things that, when you're looking at the alternate practice, maybe that scope needs to be revised. Maybe there need to be more specific questions. But again, I think that's Division 30. That's clearly not Division 50 things. So,
yeah. And
so on number 2, though, Martin, I think that if I guess I'm just gonna say, give my thoughts, and then I would love to hear everybody else's thoughts. I think, would it be an appropriate plan to say if there was an exposure draft that we may be interested in giving feedback on? If we disseminated that and scheduled a PROC meeting, sorry, not a board meeting, a committee meeting, just kind of like be a little bit nimble. If we could get a quorum, and I don't know how this all works, but I'm just saying, we could do, because it's so iffy. I don't want to schedule a meeting that, if we don't know, but we could disseminate and then give everybody a week or two to give their thoughts together and then have a meeting timely enough to provide any kind of feedback. Would that work?
Absolutely, because we can, without violating public meetings law, go through organizational steps to pull a meeting together if an exposure draft comes out, right? And then at that meeting, we would have to do it at the meeting. We can't do that part, what I'm saying next, offline. And at the meeting, right, even the determination or decision, to put it more pointedly, of do we want as a PROC to make a recommendation to the board to respond, even though whether or not PROC does that is a decision that needs to be made in the public space. So we can't do that offline, but we can offline organize a meeting where we first determine, hey, are we all on board on the PROC side that we want to comment on this and we want to make a recommendation to the board? And then if the answer to that is yes in that meeting, we can then proceed to what is it that the PROC would like to weigh in on that for the board to see before a comment deadline. So yeah, and I appreciate that nimbleness, because just knowing from this public meeting that PROC wants to be engaged and is willing to potentially schedule a special meeting just to deal with exposure draft issues, that's a huge blessing, because I just have this inkling that things are going to get really busy in the next 60 days.
Yeah, so I think that, is everybody good with that? Just kind of taking that approach, and if it's something that we feel we need to have an additional meeting prior to our January meeting, then we could schedule that at the time. All right. Everybody is nodding yes. I don't think this is a vote, right? This isn't a real vote, but just a discussion point. So I
Yeah.
think we're all kind of in line on that.
We don't need a vote on it. And quite frankly, if we don't need a full 2 hours, one of the things, Brenda, that we could shoot for is to kind of try to do it over a lunch hour to be less kind of to be a little bit more you know, to heighten the chance that it doesn't disrupt other meetings. If that
Right, and also
works
just
for,
as we,
yeah.
you know, as the information is disseminated, just making sure that we're having time to take a look at it and being prepared before we get to the meeting so that we won't take up so much time of people. So I think would be our goal. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have anything to bring up?
Martin,
All right,
I have an answer to your earlier question,
darling,
earlier
thank
in
you.
the meeting from my team about what the AICPA will report.
Okay.
So we're not sure because we're not in this arena very often where we refer somebody to the AICPA. And so, you know, the knowledge of what happened last time is a little fuzzy because it's been so long ago. But the team thinks that if the AICPA assigns additional corrective actions that will be available either to us or out on the FSBA site, and then, you know, they could do things like you can't request any extensions because they want the peer review to get done so they can see, if there's improvements. So that also may be available. And then most definitely if they refer to terminate them from the program, that definitely would be.
That definitely gets out. Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did.
that's what
thank
we
you
know
for
at
that.
this
Yeah.
point.
And I think we'll just have to monitor the FSBA for that firm and keep it on the tracking. So thank you. And Pamela, you had something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to just circle back and as a subcategory, maybe going forward under the biannual program review. I'm always so impressed with the RAB and the experience that those professionals have. And so I really feel it's important that we know what their pipeline is to keep those professionals like coming in. And so I'd like to put that on our radar as well.
That's a good point.
And Brenda, the only other question I had, do we have a list of 2026 meetings yet for the peer review oversight committee?
I don't. Does staff have anything like that? Have we?
We go clear through. Let me pull it up. We make it go on the OSCPA's fiscal year, so it's March to March.
I think are we talking about the PROC or the RAP? We're talking about the
Yeah,
PROC.
I had the exact same question. Which
Oh,
committee
sorry,
are we
I thought you
talking
were talking
about?
about the
Well,
RAB.
that's okay because we definitely will be asking about the RAB very, very soon.
Well, both. I mean, that's the second part of the question, but the first part, just the PROC, just our PROC meetings, our 4 PROC meetings. Do we have dates for those yet for 26?
There's a. Go
We
ahead,
don't.
Martin.
Go ahead, go ahead, Andrew, because I know you're getting traumatized right now in your email about all the emails that are flying forth around how we board side build our 26 calendar. So go ahead, Andrew.
Right now, just tentative. We do Wednesday, January 14th, Tuesday, May 12th, Tuesday, August 18th, Tuesday, November 3rd. And that is just tentative and not approved yet by board.
Those are PROC meetings and they get approved by the Board of Accountancy. Is that true?
Yes.
Or how that works?
So,
Okay.
Yes.
Just again, January 14th, May 12th, August 18th, November 3rd.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I wrote them down correctly. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. My
And,
main concern
no,
is
that's
the January
super
meeting
great.
doesn't slip off my calendar as we ramp up for the next busy season. So
Yeah. Are we usually striving for that 1 to 3 time, Andrew?
Mhm.
Usually what we're looking at?
I don't know that we normally put that on our calendar right away, but I think it's a
Oh,
great
okay, so
question
just the
because
date. Okay, so we could
we're
just
kind of
put
in a groove around 1 to
a little bit
3,
of
and it
holder.
seems to be working for the committee members. So,
I don't know, I was looking back and I think we've done morning and, you know, I really don't have a preference, but I wasn't sure. And then Darlene, thank you. You said you're going March to March on the RAB, so
Yeah,
do we know
have the January, February, March RAB meeting? Have we given those to you yet?
I don't have them. That doesn't mean you haven't given them to me. Just
Okay.
we can put them on our
I can
calendar.
tell you when they are. Just one moment here. I'll look it up. Friday, January 23rd at 9 o'clock. Friday, February 20th at 9 o'clock. Friday, March 20th at 10 a.m. because we switch back to daylight savings time. And we go back and forth between 9 and 10 because Hawaii does not go off of standard time.
Right. Okay.
And those are all via Zoom.
Anybody game for the January meeting since we are not meeting until January? I mean, we'll meet a little bit before that, but if you wanted to get it on your schedules, anybody interested in attending the January 23rd meeting? I'm going to be out of town.
We have a board meeting that day, but I'd volunteer for the other meetings.
I can take January 23rd. This is Pamela Parks.
Okay. All right. And Michelle, if you want to volunteer for February, we can get that booked, or we can leave it out till January. I don't know how far people really want to go on their calendars, but
I'd be happy. I'm fairly flexible those 2 months. So if there's one of the others that, or one that's harder for other committee members to make, you know, sign me up for that one.
okay, we'll put you on February 20th, and then we'll just let we'll decide March and January as we get a little bit closer.
Beautiful.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that reminder, John, because I forgot to put that on the agenda, forgetting it was November. Thank you. All right. Anything else? Okay, great. We'll give ourselves a little bit of time back. I appreciate everybody's help. If there's nothing further, I will adjourn the Oregon Board of Accountancy Peer Review Oversight Committee meeting. It is 2:11 p.m.
Great meeting, great
Bye-bye.
group. Thank you.
Thanks.